in Lesson 5.2, we're going to be practicing common denominator strategies. Today we will warm up with your whiteboards, so please grab those along with your math journal number 2. I would like you to take 3/8, 5/9, and 2/7 and write equivalent fractions. So let me show you an example. So if I number these 1, 2, and 3, 3/8, I could multiply the numerator and denominator by 2 to get 6/16. That would be equivalent. Multiply it by 3, and I would get 9/24. Multiply the numerator and denominator times 4, and I would get 12/32. Now, would you go ahead and do 5/9 and 2/7? Find 3 equivalent fractions. Yes, you will need to pause your video. Don't just let it keep running. All right, you could do 10/18. You could do 15/27. You could multiply by 4 and get 20/36. 2/7, you could multiply by 2 and get 4/14. Multiply by 3 and get 6/21. Multiply by 4 and get 8/28. All right, we've talked in the past about factors. What are the factors for 36? Well, remember, we also have been talking about factor pairs. I will put your lines out for you. There are 5 pairs. So that means you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 factors. I'll give you the first one. 1 times 36. Remember, it's an even number, so 2 will be a factor. Would you please write out the factors and factor pairs of 36? Pause your video. Well, remember, a number is a factor of another number if it divides the other number evenly without a remainder. So I know 2 because it ends in even number. 2 times 18. 3 times 12. You should have your 12s memorized. 4 times 9. And 6 times 6. But I don't need to write that 6 twice. So it's fine there. So 1 times 36. 2 times 18. 3 times 12, 4 times 9, and 6 times 6. Remember, when the factors start repeating themselves, or the turnaround fact, you know you have found all of your factors. So there they are. What is a multiple then? What is a multiple? A multiple of a number is the product of that number, product means to multiply, and another counting number. So what are the first 6 multiples of 8? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Would you write down 6 lines on your whiteboard? Great, the first multiple is always the number times 1, so 8 is the first multiple. 8 times 2 is 16, times 3 is 24, times 4 is 32, times 5 is 40, times 6 is 48. Why is it impossible to list all the multiples of a number? Oh, it would be a never-ending list of numbers. You could go on through millions and billions. I am going to have you on your whiteboard. We're going to take the number 12. So write 12 up at the top. We're going to write out the factors for 12. You can write them as factor pairs and stop when you get the turnaround fact, or you can just write them as factors in a list. Then I want you to write out the first 6 multiples of 12. I'll give you a little hint. 1 and 12, and this one's 12. Go ahead and do that on your whiteboard. Pause your video as needed. Well, the factors of 12, I always go in order. Start with 1 times itself, then go to 2. Is there anything times 2? Yes. 2 times 6, so then go to 3. 3 times 4, then I would go to 4 and I would go, oh, 4 times 3, ding, 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 ding. I have the turnaround fact. So the factors are 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. So what are the first 6 multiples? These are multiples. And you need to learn the difference between that one and factors. So 12, 24, 36, 48, 60, and 72. There are many different ways to find common denominators, which is what you need to add or subtract fractions. One way is just to do the QCD, which is the quick common denominator. What is the quick common denominator for 3/7 and 7/8? Well, to find the quick common denominator is just to take the 2 denominators and multiply them by each other. So what's the quick common denominator for 3/7 and 7/8? Just take 7 times 8, which would be 56. You can do that. So if you were finding the quick common denominator for 1/4 and 2/3, what would it be? Take 4 times 3. Your quick common denominator is 12. What about 10 and 5? 50. So why does this strategy work? If you were to write out the multiples, when you multiply them by each other, they're going to be found in both lists of multiples. It's not going to be the first number they have in common. So look how many multiples I have to write out to get to 50. It's not the smallest common denominator because look at, there's a denominator they have in common before 50. Look at, here's another one. And yet another one. And still another one before we get to 50. So that's a quick way to do it. Is it the best way always? It may not be. We're going to go ahead and look at 3 different strategies for finding common denominators. Please move into your math journal to page 156. At the top, it says Practicing Common Denominator Strategies. Summarize the strategies discussed in class for finding a common denominator. Circle the ones that always work. Put a star next to the strategy you prefer. So, one of the things that you can do is to make a list of equivalent fractions until you find an equivalent fraction. Here's what I'm going to say, 5th graders. You do not have to write all this down. You can watch this part. This is the only part that you can just listen to but don't have to write down. Or find an equivalent fraction with a common denominator. It's just a lot of writing. This will always work. Strategy number 2, see if one denominator, and we did this one in lesson 5.1 just to let you know, see if one denominator is a multiple of another. Strategy number 3 is to multiply the 2 original denominators, use their product, which is what we did with the 10 and the 5. Product is the answer when you multiply, as a common denominator. This one always works. Sometimes we don't always have the denominator as a multiple of another one. Okay, moving down the page, this is what I want you to make sure you're writing from here on out. Use any of these strategies to find common denominators. Rewrite each pair of fractions using a common denominator and then solve. So I am going to look at A as my example. They did not multiply 9 times 6. Instead, they found a common denominator by listing out the multiples. So in this case, they did 9, 18, 27, 6, 12, 18. Guess what? There is the first number they have in common. Okay, so B says, what is 2 9s plus 5 6 then? Well, we have the 2 fractions up here, so I'm going to add those together. 18 remains the denominator. I add the numerators. 15 plus 4 is 19. That's called an improper fraction, when the top number, the numerator, is larger than the denominator. So I'm going to change this to a mixed number and call it 1 and 1/18. What happens now when I subtract 5 6 minus 2 9s? Well, here are the fractions that I know they equal. So I know it's going to equal 18. 15 minus 4. Notice that 5 6 had to be written first because that's the larger fraction. Just like in whole numbers, the larger number needs to be listed first. 15 minus 4 is 11 18ths. So I know that 2 9s is less than 5 6. Okay, 2, 4, and 12. I'm going to write out the multiples. 4, 8, 12, 16, 12, 24. Guess what? They have a common denominator of 12. So now I'm going to multiply the numerator and denominator by the same number to get 12s. Multiply the bottom by 3, multiply the top by 3. 9 12ths is the same as 3 4ths. 7 12ths I don't need to change. So now using that information, I'm going to do B, 3 4ths plus 7 12ths. So I'm looking back up here. I'm just adding those two. 12ths remains the same, and 9 plus 7 is 16. That is an improper fraction. I'm going to change it to a mixed number. It equals 1 whole. 12 12ths is the same as 1 whole. That would leave me 4 12ths. That would leave me 4 12ths left. Then 9 12ths, which is the same as 3 4ths minus 7 12ths, is 2 12ths. So if I compare these two, 9 12ths or 3 4ths is greater than 7 12ths. Number 3, 4 7s and 1/2. I'm going to write out the multiples till I get 1 in common. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Ding, 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 ding. Here's a common factor. So my common factor is 14. So I'm going to change each denominator 14ths. Multiply by 2 in the denominator, multiply by 2 in the numerator. Multiply by 7 in the denominator, multiply by 7 in the numerator. So there we have equivalent fractions. Now I can add those. 4/7, which is the same as 8/14, plus 1/2, which is the same as 7/14. 14ths remains the same. 8 plus 7 is 15. I'm going to change that to a mixed number. 14 14ths is the same as 1 whole, leaving me 1 and 1/14 left. So if I compare, 4/7 is greater than 1/2. Moving on to journal page 157. Journal page 157. For each problem, find a common denominator and write which strategy you used. Then write the fractions using a common denominator and solve. Strategies, I listed equivalent fractions. Second one, I noticed one denominator was a multiple of the other denominator. I found a quick common denominator. I'm going to notice that 15 is a multiple of 3 when I write out. So I know that. So that's the second one. So I'm going to say strategy number 2. 1, 2, and 3. Fractions with the common denominator. So I'm going to change them both to 15ths. Actually, I'll just rewrite the second one. So 2/3, I multiply 2 times 5 to give me 15. So I multiply the top by 5. 2 times 5 is 10. And 10/15. Didn't need to change anything about that one. So adding those two together, 2/3, which is the same as 10/15, and 10/15 is 20/15. It is an improper fraction, so I can change it to 1 and 5/15. So 2/3 greater than, less than, or equal to 10/15. They are equal. Look at that. Number 2, 1/4 and 2/9. This time, I think I'm just going to find a quick denominator. Number 3. I'm just going to multiply the two numbers times each other. So 4 times 9 is 36. So I'm just going to change each one to 36. So 4 times 9 is 36. So take 1 times 9 to get 9. And 9 times 4 is 36. So take the top number times 4. So I have 9/36 and 8/36. Now I can subtract 1/4, which is the same as 9/36, minus 8/36, which is the same as 2/9. I get 1/36. I know that, remember, this is the same as 1/4. This was the same as 2/9. So this one is greater than 2/9. We will not worry about finishing the rest of this journal page.